Hi guys, it's Carl and welcome to episode 1 of my multiplayer level design tutorial series. That is a mouthful. I need to change the title, I think. But let's just keep going with this because I have a lot of ground to cover. The first thing that you should note is that this is not the level itself. This is just a mock-up level where I'll be going through examples of what you should be aiming for this particular tutorial series. Now, if you want to follow at home, I think that would be super because the best way to learn something is by doing, especially if you're working in games or animation or sort of in this particular industry. Learning by doing is best as opposed to just watching a video and listening to me talk. Now, the first thing that you should know before you even start, making modular geometry is two things, right? The first thing is research. For this particular game, I'll be making, my setting will be sort of neo-Victoria, so think steampunk, but without all the cogs and gears. Basically steampunk without the steam. I guess that just makes it punk. But, so just, yeah, think the look and feel of steampunk just without all that extra copper and brass. Just, yeah, you sort of get it. Now, that's the first thing. Research. I cannot stress that enough. Even if you're making like a World of Warcraft style, hand painted whatever, people don't just look at a painted image of a rock, right, and think that that's what a rock looks like in real life. Even if you're making Diablo or, like I said, World of Warcraft, use real life references and base your stylizations off of what you research. So that's one thing, that's research done. The next thing is make a floor plan and make several floor plans. Doesn't matter if none of them get through, because the more floor plans that you make, the easier it'll be for you to make a final decision, and you never know what you'll come up with anyway. Alright, so that's floor plans and research. The next thing is playtest often, and that's what we're about to do right now. Just click play, we'll get into it. Alright, so this is playtesting, right? Playtesting is the best way to see if your level is working or not, right? So because you can actually interact with the world, you can move around, shoot and all that. Obviously for this example you can't do that yet. But playtesting is key as well. That's a big thing. Next is modular geometry. Obviously, as a level designer, you should be like parading down the street saying, "I use modular geometry." You should, because it'll make your life easier, and if you need to make changes you can. I've shown you the snapping tools here in Unity already. If you haven't watched that video, go watch it. And yeah, okay, that's pretty cool. The next thing is create a sense of discontinuity, and this is probably going to take up most of the video. And what I mean by discontinuity are things like sort of use up your 3D space well, and we'll take a look at this in a sec. Alright, this is what I mean. This wall here, this giant wall, as pretty as it looks with its geometry, modular geometry, it's one flat plane. If you sort of look at it, right, it's flat. It doesn't come out at us. There are no indentations. It's just one big flat plane. That's not using 3D space very well. You can easily fill up that space by adding things like small props, AC units. For this being a tenement, low quality housing, you'd have like fire escapes like running down the front there, and that'll work just fine because that's what it's for. Like, it uses the 3D space and it fills the world. It sort of gives it character, and that is sort of proven with this second building here. This second building sort of uses the 3D space. I haven't made any fire escape props yet, so you'll have to forgive me for completely forgetting about it. But this sort of uses that. You've got the skirting along, each floor that sort of breaks it up, and it breaks the continuity. It creates that sense of discontinuity. If I put a brick texture onto the wall there, then it'll come up as, well, it's not as tiled as it looks, even though the textures are tiling. And that's what you should be going for. You should be aiming for using your 3D space well. Now, if I go over to this other scene here, I'm going to actually exit play mode because I'll be able to explain it a lot better in the editor. And I'll just rotate my light just around there. There we go. We'll expand the view. Alright, here we go. With this particular scene, I've used up as much of the 3D space as I can using the geometry that I had. And as you can see, I've added depth to my level by creating this sort of, I think that's a ramp going down. Yeah, that's a ramp. There's a ramp there that sort of leads off to a secret area of the level. But just because there's a ramp there doesn't mean that the player can go there, right? There's always that thought that maybe there's something down there, right? If you can give the player that sort of feeling that, hey, what's down there? Can I go down there? And even though they can't go there, if you were able to actually get them to think that there was something there, then you've done a good job, and kudos to you. But that's sort of what you're going for, right? The illusion that there's more to the level than what the player can actually see. Telling a story within your story. Obviously, for a multiplayer map, this probably won't be as easy to do, simply because of the pace of the game. So there's not that sort of, stop and smell the flowers sort of feeling. But you can still do that. I mean, if you take a look at Left 4 Dead 2, they do that very well. As well as Dead Island, that sort of does it well. I didn't play Dead Island for very long, so I really don't know. But games like that, where you have that sort of drop in, drop out system, where a player can sort of stop, look, and even though there is that multiplayer thing, they can still look at this and go, that looks pretty. Anyway, moving on, because I only have, 3 minutes left for this video. Alright, the next thing that you should do is create an even playing field without making a shoebox. This sort of applies more to multiplayer levels, so if you're making a multiplayer level, don't make this, right? I'm gonna zoom out. Don't make something like that. That's boring. It's a shoebox. That's sort of what it is, right? What I've done here is I've just created, 4 walls, pretty much, and I've called it a level. That's not a level. That's like a container, a shoebox, right? Don't make a shoebox level. But even if you are confined to a shoebox level, there are ways to get around that, and we'll be going through that in a future video. But for now, just note that you shouldn't be making things like, if you are confined to using a restricted space, make it feel like it's not in a restricted space. Take a look at Modern Warfare 2. One of the maps for that, and that was set in the desert, sort of like an oil rig in the desert. That was a pretty cool map. It was, it was a small box map, but because of its vertical aspects, it didn't feel that way. So that's pretty cool. Don't make a shoebox. Again, I'll be going through that later, but for now, we're going to touch on the last thing for this video, and that is avoid tiling materials. Well, at least avoid using tiling materials too much, and I'll show you what I mean. I'll grab this brick texture here that I made last year, I think it was, and it looks fine on its own. And if I chuck down another one, yeah, it looks okay. What happens if I delete that first? Take a look at what'll happen if I start adding in a few more of these materials, right? So just watch. Just watch. And you can see that it's starting to tile badly. This is sort of something that you want to avoid at all costs. And there are ways to get around that. Again, I will go through that in a future video. But for now, what you should know is that tiling textures are good only if you can make variations in them. Alright, just make sure that you can vary, even if you are using a base texture, right? I've already given that away. If you are using a base sort of diffuse map, you can make a variant of it, or several different variants of it. And in Unity, we have a really cool thing that makes decals. So if you want to put like graffiti over like a whole wide wall, then you can do that here in Unity. I'm not really sure about UDK, but tiling textures are dangerous if you don't control it properly. Alright, so that is it for this video. I know I didn't show you much, but I haven't finished making all the gray box geometry for the level design, the actual tutorial itself, so stick around. And if you didn't learn anything from this video, that's fine. because like I said, I need more time to make geometry. I am so very tired. And so until next time, make some geometry for your own sort of mini project if you want to follow along, because I think you'll learn a lot better if you watch these videos and sort of made your level at the same time, because I think learning by doing in this industry works perfect. But until next time, I'll see you all later. Bye.